Welcome to the podcast series showcasing the winners of the 2024 Dyslexia Canada Educational Excellence Awards. We established this award to honor the outstanding contributions of individuals nationwide who work tirelessly to advance core pillars of Dyslexia Canada's mission, ensuring that all Canadian children have access to universal early screening and evidence-based, systematic, explicit foundational reading instruction. Right now, just over half of Canadian children are living in provinces committed to implementing that. Alberta has been setting the pace nationally by embracing evidence-based reading instruction and early screening, and it's definitely a positive step forward. In this episode, we have the privilege of speaking with Andrea Van Hoof, a teacher at Bertha Kennedy Catholic School who's been actively involved in this transformative process, supporting both students and colleagues alike. She's a recipient of the 2024 Dyslexia Canada Educational Excellence Awards. And congratulations, Andrea. Is there any personal experience or motivating factor that made you want to pursue this challenging line of work?
I actually struggled significantly with school. I definitely wasn't one of those students where school just came naturally to me. I had to work hard. And I remember growing up, I struggled significantly actually with reading comprehension and mathematics. And I remember my parents had put me in touch with this tutoring organization that I visited once a week. And we were working specifically on reading comprehension and numerical fluency. One thing that I remember and something that I can appreciate now as a teacher is this specific tutoring organization really focused on direct instruction and building fluency with reading, but also with mathematics too. One of the things that we would do is we would look at a reading passage, and they were doing all sorts of comprehension strategies that I still use today in my classroom, such as activating prior knowledge, making predictions, summarizing stories, things like that, and a lot of direct instruction as well with mathematics. And I remember doing lots of mad minutes, and it was things like that in that tutoring organization, and that really helped me. And I think another thing too that really helped me as well is I went to St. Albert Catholic High School, which, fun fact, I now work for that exact same school division. And I remember one of the things that I loved about that high school was the smaller class sizes. So I was able to really get a lot of teacher attention and focus. I was able to ask questions. So I think definitely that tutoring organization and the teachers and staff in the small classes at St. Albert Catholic High School really played into the person that I am today, but also the teacher that I am today.
So it sounds like you're taking your own personal experience and ultimately the science behind reading, combining them both, and now using that in the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because I grew up struggling with academics, I can definitely appreciate how hard it is to go through a system where there's potential barriers to academic instruction and learning. So for me, I really get it. And when I became a teacher, I think this was something that was essentially a natural calling for me, is to ensure that we provide universal strategies for all students, because education is for everybody and no one's being left behind, including students who may be proficient readers, but also students who are struggling readers, and making sure that we're hounding in on the specific skills that they need to acquire and using evidence-based practices and interventions to assist with their learning.
What does a typical day look like for you in the classroom?
There's a lot. I am very cognizant about the 5 pillars of reading. So I make sure that, every day in my grade 1 classroom, we're dedicating time to phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, and also phonics instruction every day. So one of the things that we do is, and I can talk about this a little bit later, I use the Phonics Companion in my classroom, which was a Pearson published resource authored by Dr. Giorgio and Dr. Christy Dunn here in Alberta. And we do phonics and phonemic awareness and phonological awareness every day. And I follow this resource to a T. It's about, I would say, 35 minutes of instruction per day. I utilize the words that are provided in the Phonics Companion for phonological awareness. So that would be, for example, let's say I show a word, and let's say we're doing CH, the digraph CH, which makes the sound ch. So we would talk about, okay, let's segment those sounds. So we'll say chat, and I'll get the kids to clap with the word chat, and then they count the sounds, ch, at, chat, right? So with phonological and phonemic awareness, I'm not showing the words to the kids because that's about being able to auditorily segment and blend sounds. But then we lead into our lesson, and that's when I'll actually show the letter sound correspondences. And we're using very direct, explicit, systematic instruction with our phonics lesson. So we introduce the letter sound, we go over the words. And one thing I like about this resource too, and something that I'm very interested in as an educator as well, is that natural connection between oral language and letter learning. And what's great about the Phonics Companion is it actually has videos that are done by a speech-language pathologist, and she shows students how to make the sound that we're learning. So what's your tongue position? How are your lips formed? Things like that I think really help the students when we're producing the sounds. So we'll do the phonological awareness piece. We'll introduce the sound. I'll show the kids with the video how we produce the sound, and then we go and we write all the words. I introduce the words, we're writing them down. They're sounding out the words. And one thing I also want to do when I'm building fluency is I pair it with a decodable book. So what I'll do is I'll show a decodable book on our smartboard, and at the beginning of the year, what I was doing is I would read the story. And in this decodable book, if we're learning CH makes the sound ch, this book is going to have CH words embedded in that text quite frequently so that students practice reading it and mastering it. Now, at the beginning of the grade 1, what I would do is I would read the story and I would have them point and follow along. And anytime they heard or see CH, which makes the sound ch, they'd have to pat their head, which is just a little informal assessment to ensure that they're, being cognizant of the letter sounds presented. Now we're in the middle of the year, so I actually have the students doing choral reading, and they're reading the book together, pointing to the text, patting their head anytime they see the target letter sound for that day. And then we actually go into centers, and this is where I do literacy centers, I'd say probably about 4 times a week. And the literacy centers are targeted to the 5 pillars of reading. So I'll have the students grouped up into cooperative learning groups, and they'll move around the classroom in different centers. Now, each center is, again, focused on learning concepts that have already been taught or have already been introduced to the students. So I'll have one center that's on phonological and or phonemic awareness. I'll have a center, let's say, that's a board game where the students roll the dice, they move their player, and they have to read the CH word. So again, reintroducing previously taught letter sound correspondences. I'll also have a high frequency word game. So again, maybe I'll have a board game where it's high frequency words that they have already learned in class. They have to read the words, they have to write it down. And I'll even have a vocabulary center, and one that could even tie into our writing curriculum. So I'll give you an example. One activity that we've been doing currently in our writing instruction is learning about synonyms and antonyms. So I'll pull up vocabulary words that are natural pairs in relation to synonyms and antonyms, and I'll have the students play a sorting game with that. And then when they come to my center, that's when I'll work on skills that are quite particular to what the students' needs are. So what's really such a blessing about the school division that I work at, Greater St. Albert Catholic Schools, is we do universal screenings about 3 times a year. And those universal screenings really show me what are the skills that the students need to learn going forward. And so I'm able to analyze that data and make those decisions. I'm not just guessing. I actually have data that can show me, okay, this is what this particular student needs. So let's say if I have a student who did their universal screener and I identify needs with understanding grapheme to phoneme correspondences, we'll be doing a lot of that. Learning about letter sounds, reading a decodable book, different aspects like that. If I have a student who is proficient in, let's say, their fluency, I might want to work a bit more on vocabulary and comprehension. So being able to target my instruction to student needs. So I would say that's a big chunk of what I do. And I'm always trying to think about going back to those 5 pillars of reading. And again, going to that tier 1 and tier 2 instruction. What is it that those particular students need in my classroom?
It does sound like you're having some success with that. Now, how do you go about trying to share that with your colleagues to make sure that everyone is on the same page?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really blessed with this division because we at Greater St. Albert Catholic Schools, we partnered with Dr. Giorgio and Dr. Christy Dunn, who are both academics at the University of Alberta. And we have been partnering with them so that we can continue our journey with structured literacy and the science of reading. Now, when I got hired at this division, I, of course, have previous experience working for both Dr. Giorgio and Dr. Christy Dunn as a research assistant. And my administration, actually last year, they knew about the things that I was doing in my classroom. They knew about my prior experience with research. So they had actually asked me to present a session on structured literacy to our staff, just as a sneak peek as to what's going on in my classroom. And I guess this session was pretty well received because the opportunity came up for me as well to present at what we call in our division ATA Institute Day, which was a professional development day where all the teachers in our Greater St. Albert Catholic School division attended PD. And so I was able to present on structured literacy and, I guess just how to analyze universal screeners. What does the data mean? How can we use this to inform our instruction? How can we use this to create different literacy centers and go from there? I was also a member of our district's summer working group. So over the summer of 2022, we were prepping for our new curriculum in Alberta. And so I was hired over the summer along with many other teacher colleagues in our division to curate resources that we think would be beneficial to all teachers within different grade levels to elicit structured literacy and evidence-based practices as well. And recently, I was working with our division's literacy consultant to pilot different morphology resources as well that are also evidence-based to provide to our teachers who are in Division 2, so grades 4, 5, 6, because morphology is quite a huge aspect of our new curriculum for Division 2 students. So I guess I've been really blessed to have shared my knowledge in different capacities, whether it be with staff and even with parents as well. I do parent-teacher conferences and I'm able to hound in on my experiences and provide professional advice and, different suggestions that I may have to help students with, different skills or what particular students' needs are.
Are there any interactions with parents or students that stand out to you?
I've had actually quite a few students. I've been very blessed where we've looked at their universal screeners at the beginning of the year, and we've noticed skills that we need to build on with that particular student development. And then by the end of the year, we look at their universal screeners and they're going up significantly in their assessments. And it's just great to see. And I remember having a parent saying, it's just so interesting seeing my child who at one point in time was having difficulty sounding out CVC words, and now they're reading quite fluently. And I've been really blessed to have quite a few parents notice this growth, the same growth that I'm noticing at school too. So I think in our division, we're just doing a really excellent job, and we're just so blessed to have these partnerships with academics at the University of Alberta. And I think it's not just me that's noticing growth. I think it would be many teachers in our division could attest to this.
What kind of a working relationship do you have with Dyslexia Canada?
I have actually used some of Dyslexia Canada's resources. I know that Dyslexia Canada, they have developed a back card. So it's, I guess, a little pamphlet, so to speak, that gives parents information of what do I need to look for when my child is learning to read. So by the end of kindergarten, you know, my child should be able to recognize rhymes, be able to understand different letters and recognize that following the alphabetic principle. And it really outlines what are the different milestones that by certain points of the year at certain grade levels, what do parents want their children to see, right? So by the end of grade 1, students were able to, you know, achieve certain outcomes. And I actually refer to this a lot too, even for myself, because, you know, I want to know, okay, you know, I'm teaching grade 1 this year. So by the end of the December, what are the key factors that they need to know? So I've used the Dyslexia Canada's back card a lot as well. And I also have the Dyslexia Canada, there was a children's book that was developed. So I've been able to use that as well. I just received my order, I think it was a few weeks ago. So I'm really excited to introduce that to my staff and, you know, also my students too.
You were also a key organizer of your school-based literacy night in 2023. Can you tell us about the event and how it helps to raise awareness?
This was a public event that we hosted in January of 2023. And what I had worked with my administration because we wanted to show all the great work that we were doing at Bertha Kennedy School. And, you know, I think there was a lot of talk about parents about the new curriculum, but I think we wanted to also show parents, well, this is what the new curriculum looks like, and this is what we are doing at Bertha Kennedy School to elicit structured literacy pedagogy in our classroom. So I was working with my administration, and what we did is we had, I guess, different stations in the gymnasium, and each of these stations followed the pillars of the 5 pillars of reading at different grade levels. So we were able to showcase, you know, in grade 6, this might be a typical grade 6 activity related to vocabulary or comprehension. And then maybe at this station, this is an example of a grade 2 phonics game that we might play in our grade 2 classrooms. So it was just basically showing what are the different activities and different means of teaching that we are using to help students learn how to read in a structured literacy format. We also invited academics from the University of Alberta. We had a guest author show up virtually named Shayla Rain, and she presented her children's book, and we were able to auction that off, which was wonderful. And it was just a great way to celebrate literacy, but also showcase what we are doing amongst our school and also our school division with access to universal screeners that we use about 3 times a year, and how we at Bertha Kennedy School are, you know, following the 5 pillars of reading and how we're helping students learn to read in those 5 pillars.
Alberta is one of the few provinces that has embraced evidence-based reading instruction and early screening, and there are clearly some challenges when it comes to implementing those kinds of practices consistently across the province. What do you think are the necessary next steps to make that happen?
I think making sure that everyone is essentially on the same page in regards to structured literacy. And I think it's important that we look to school divisions, particularly in Alberta, that are having successes with their universal screeners, and we're noticing growth. And I think it's important to ask questions and really pay attention to those school divisions, ensuring that, you know, we're all utilizing our standardized assessments. And I think just making sure that we really pay attention to the school divisions that are following the 5 pillars of reading instruction, utilizing evidence-based practices, and noticing growth with their universal screeners. I think it's really beneficial to take a look at what those school divisions are doing. Greater St. Albert Catholic Schools would be an excellent example For sure. And I know even our school division, we work together with other school divisions, and we're all collaborative. I think it's important that we all work together because, again, education is for everybody, and we want to ensure that no one is left behind.
Do you have any advice for teachers in other provinces that have just started implementing an evidence-based curriculum?
Learning a new curriculum can be really overwhelming, but we know it's important work. So I think it's really important to ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask questions, and have a growth mindset too. You know, when I started my first year of teaching, we hounded in on what our practices are, and we've grown from that, right? You know, we get better and better as we learn more. So I would say my advice would be don't give up, and don't be afraid to ask questions. It's a journey, and it's an important one. But we need to ensure that, again, we're all working together collaboratively to ensure best practices for our students.
Well, that sounds like the kind of advice you gave yourself as a student and are now giving people as an educator. Hey, congratulations again on winning this award and taking all that you've learned as a student and beyond and managed to put it into practice. It sounds like your school board is reaping the rewards of your passion for teaching kids how to read, Andrea.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I was pretty shocked when I won this award. I know Dyslexia Canada is a national charity organization, so to receive an award of this caliber really means a lot to me. So, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss my passions.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the series showcasing the winners of the 2024 Dyslexia Canada Educational Excellence Awards. To learn more about this year's winners, visit dyslexiacanada.org, where you can read a blog about each of them. Stay tuned for our next episode.